That's your fear talking. What is your intuition saying here? And that might be a slow practice. That might be meditation. That might be walking in nature, going for a swim, tapping into your source regularly, listening, and taking that intuitive action. The moment you get the intuitive hit, okay, I feel that in my gut. I know this is right. This is not fear-driven. This is not striving and wanting to bring in something that's really not aligned. This is it, and I feel it. And my next step, this is the subtle shift, is to do blank. And it is just one thing. It can be a couple of little things, but you're taking that action, but you're listening to your higher self, and you're trusting that it's got your purpose, your wisdom, your soul contract, whatever you like to call it, holding it strong for you and marching alongside you as you make your way through this.
Welcome to the Shadow Mike podcast and YouTube channel, which aims to provide you with language, tools, and guidance in your journey towards personal and relational wholeness. We'll discuss topics ranging from psychology, spirituality, leadership, sexuality, and more. My name is Michael, and I will be your guide for stimulating musings and host for insightful interviews with thought leaders, practitioners, and experts who have a thing or two to share about living an integrated and meaning-making life. Whether you're looking to deepen your connection with your interior world, overcome challenges in your relationships, or expand your psychosomatic horizons with fresh perspectives and paradigms, the Shadow Mike podcast and YouTube channel offers a safe, playful, yet challenging space for dialogue and introspection. It is all a gift, so let's go enjoy it together. Welcome back to the Shadow Mike podcast and YouTube channel. I have with me today my good friend, Jennifer Delliquadri. We ran into each other suddenly at a networking event, and now we're like drafting behind each other in these little conversations that we have. You've been such a gift to me already, Jennifer, and I'm pumped to have you on the podcast and get your perspective.
Thank you so much for having me here, Mike. I love to be able to connect with other podcasters, and I do remember the moment we met. It was walking into the event. You held the door open for me. I'm like, oh, what a nice guy. And then I was like, oh, he's going to the networking event I'm going to. So it was a great beginning.
I know. Yeah. Oh, so it's so good. And this energy exchange that Marley Williams hosts, I know you were on her podcast recently, and
Yep.
just like there's such an incredible alchemy that takes place. You just end up meeting the people you're supposed to meet. It's such a gift. Well, as we get started, I would love for you to introduce yourself, share a little bit about what you do and how you work with people. You're a coach, you're a podcaster, you have a book coming out. I mean, so many good things. Share a little bit about what your passion, your purpose, what you do in the world.
Yeah, and that is the ultimate question. One of the things that, to really pare it down to the bare basics, I help people. And to be more specific, I like to consider myself a sovereign business and life coach or mentor. And it's something that's evolved over the years. I've been a life coach in capacities for a really long time, and I have now integrated business into it because I have been building a business online for nearly 10 years, and I'm like, wow, I could really help people with this. And what happens is they start coming to me and they're wanting help with something, like something in their life. I, for years, was a coach for parents of teenagers, and so they would come to me for that. But life is so much more than that, and that's why I evolved. I want to be way more of a mentor and help people really optimize all areas of their life. And the people I really work with are purpose-driven. They've got a mission, and I help them magnetize and monetize that mission. And what ends up happening ultimately, they really tap into the mission, but they also learn so much about themselves in the process. And I like to just consider myself as a mentor through that, which is why I use the word sovereign, because I am not here to tell them what to do or how to do it. I'm here to help them decide for themselves how they want to do it, whether it's business or in life, in relationships, health, whatever capacity. I am there to help mentor them through to create the life and business that they really want.
Oh, well, when you say mentor, and as I hear you define that, I mean, what comes up for me is the idea, concept, structure of initiation. I mean, you talk a lot about midlife, right? This kind of point where everything you've built up suddenly starts to just deteriorate, fall apart. It doesn't resonate anymore. And something new is coming forward now, right? Like there's something more required of you in your life. And I mean, the midlife crisis is a bit of a trope, but what it is it's this second initiation. You know, you're born, that's an initiation. And there's this like midlife where like, okay, you're going to be born again, if you will. Like there's like a whole unraveling of the old life and this entering into the new life. So can you talk about, when you say mentor, how do you see that through this kind of initiatory lens of helping people enter into the new landscape that they're going into?
I like to imagine my role is I've been through something really challenging, and now I'm turning around and I'm helping to walk people through something similar. And when you bring up midlife, this is where it all began for me. It's right around the time I hit 40. I was like, okay, at the time I was a teacher, and I had been a teacher for a really long time. Elementary school, it was my purpose, it was my passion. But then something happened. It was a shift, which is something we can talk about for sure. But it was something like, I like to call it a midlife evolution, because I knew, like, for the longest time, I was like, I'm going to be a teacher until I retire. Like, this is it for me. And then all of a sudden it kind of wasn't. And I got curious about, well, what could this mean? And what else could I possibly be called to do if not being a classroom teacher? And thus began the exploration. So I have since created a process or a method or a term to describe this. And I call it the subtle shifts method. And it's kind of like a descriptor for what we go through in any phase of our life. It doesn't have to be midlife. I've gone through this method many, many times, and it didn't come to me until after the fact, after several times. But essentially what you're receiving is a call. It's like this call is coming from inside the house, like in a horror movie, right? The call is coming from inside the house. And, you get to decide, am I going to answer this call, or am I just going to let it ring and continue doing what I'm doing? And at the time, I decided to answer the call. And the best way to do that is just to say, okay, let's see what this means, and make a decision. Maybe you start talking about it with people or meeting people who are also on this path of exploration. And you're really just starting to learn more about yourself. And that's the inquiry, the self-inquiry. So that's phase one for me. The subtle shifts method is you just answer the call. You hear it, you answer it. And that shifts you into phase two. And that's the exploration. That's where a lot of shit's going to come up, right? It's going to stir up all the stuff that you didn't realize was, underneath the surface. It's going to challenge you to step out of your comfort zone. And this is where a lot of people start working with coaches and therapists and mentors to help them through these things. And I can imagine your clients are in the same, where they're in that like messy middle. It's also like I imagine it like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. So when they enter their cocoon or their chrysalis, they literally turn to goo. They have no form and no shape. They're transforming themselves. And nobody can really see it happening from the outside. Maybe a few people who are close to you might see it, but it's a lot under the surface, and you may not see many results on the outside yet. And there may be some doubt, and it's just kind of a roller coaster, which is why having a mentor can really help, because then you're not like, what's wrong with me? Am I doing this wrong, right? And all the books, all the podcasts, right? Just going to people who have been through this before or have expertise, that's kind of that middle phase. And then the step three is when it's a moment when you can look back and you can say, whoa, I just created everything that I wanted and that I was wanting in that beginning call phase. Like, oh my gosh, I'm suddenly here. You're the butterfly. And just like with any cycle, it goes around and around and around. I can look back on my life and I see how I went through this multiple times in my life, but I wasn't able to actually really understand what was happening until I went through the inquiry so many times where I was like, oh, this is actually a pattern. And I see my clients go through that. And I'm like, if I just name it and call it the phase, then it demystifies it, takes out some of that guesswork, makes them realize that this is actually part of the process, and it normalizes the ups and downs. And so that all happened around 40 for me. And it's been an evolution since then, several iterations since then. And here I am 10 years later. Like, I'm ready to help people go through that same process with a little more grace and ease.
Oh, thank you. That's so well put. And I think the demystification of it is really important because on one level, some people they may get to this threshold of, life is demanding more from them in some area of their life, and they're entering into that, and it can feel too big. It's like, oh, I can't do that. I can't even go anywhere near that. I've also seen how when there's this growing evolution that starts to rise up, people might idealize it and idealize even their own journey in such a way that's like, well, no one else has ever gone through something like this. And therefore that's kind of this like isolation at the top. And like both are kind of defenses against actually entering into that journey. And when you were talking about self-inquiry, exploration, and then I wrote down reflect, right? Like looking back, it connects with the three movements of initiation. There's separation, there's initiation or the ordeal in the middle phase, and then there is the return, this kind of coming back. When you have journeyed with people, you talk about subtle shifts, but when you're experiencing a subtle shift, it's not subtle. It's these are big emotions. Can you talk a little bit, unpack this idea of subtle shifts and what that experience is like?
Absolutely. So often when a person starts to get a vision for what they want to create in the world and in their life, it can feel like a giant leap. Like, I'm here in this phase of my life and I would like to be there. And that feels so far, and so many people will shut down and think, I can't do that. That's too much. It's too heavy. That's not meant for me. And so when I am guiding them through, the subtle shift is small, intentional actions done over and over and over. It's taking that very first step. And I like to think of it less of as a scary step or a big step or really like jumping out of your comfort zone, and more like entering the growth zone. Something that's uncomfortable and a little unfamiliar, but also feels doable. So it pushes you to a discomfort, not all the way into full-blown panic. And so when someone comes to me and they're like, hey, Jennifer, I really want to create XYZ. We can get into the why, and we really build up the passion behind it and the fire, and usually that's right there. And before they get into shutdown mode is like, I don't know what to do. The overthinking and the perfectionism starts to kick in. I just say, well, what's one small thing that you can do in the next week that will move you in that direction? They make that decision. I'm their accountability partner. And then what happens is over time, after they've done these subtle shifts, those subtle shifts that felt uncomfortable are no longer uncomfortable. It's just their new norm. It's their new comfort zone. And the things that may have thrown them into full-blown panic are now maybe a discomfort. And they can actually do them without getting into full-blown panic, which is also where, I am a somatic facilitator. So I teach them ways to regulate their nervous system through it. So eventually they're doing these giant brave things, but they don't feel massive anymore because they've done those small subtle things, and it builds up, it compounds. So I like to think at the beginning, it's almost like you're pushing something up the hill and it feels like a lot of work until eventually you get to the top and it starts to just flow right down. But it's just because you've taken those small steps over and over and over and proven to yourself that you can, and built the confidence and the identity of the person who follows through. And eventually, like I said, you get to that other side and you're like, I can't believe I did that. And you're there.
Yeah. I love, like when I'm hearing you talk about this, like reflect and look back, I'm actually in my imagination on Mount St. Helens. And I remember this like early hours of the morning looking back and seeing multiple other peaks, Mount Hood being one of them. You know, I'm in Portland, so Mount Hood is kind of the ever-present guardian over the city. And here I am on St. Helens, and Mount Hood is like beneath me. It's like wildly smaller than usual. And, that was an epic moment. And yet, like, there was so much, cold, dark, like, digging my feet into the ice and snow. When you walk with clients through this process, what are some of those things that commonly rise up that want to prevent or detour people off of the initiatory path that they're on?
All of the clients I work with have a tendency to overthink, to analyze, and not able to move forward because the options are so grand. And overthinking generally is just perfectionism. If I think my way through it, I will end up coming to the right answer, to the right direction, but there really is no right direction. It's their perfectionist brain telling them there is a right way and you need to choose the right way or else you will fail. And underneath all of that is just an underlying tone of not good enough. That is what we get to the core of, because anytime the overthinking and the perfectionism comes up, it's that inner critic, I call it a gremlin, coming up and saying, not good enough. And it's a self-preservation thing, because at some point in their life, something happened and they were made to feel like they weren't good enough. And not good enough comes in so many different flavors, right? Not thin enough, not smart enough, not accomplished enough, not rich enough, all of the flavors of it. But the general underlying idea is you don't measure up. And so they try to band-aid over it by choosing the right direction, by making it perfect, and all with the need for external validation. Other people are like, good job, you, this looks good. All right, fantastic. And when you really put yourself out there for a mission, that external validation comes in. Like, if people say I'm doing it good, then I must be doing it good. But if you can really get to the core of that not good enough, unearth it, figure out when did it come? When was this created? And one thing we really do is we don't shun that inner critic, because it was created to protect us. To protect us from heavy emotions, shame, guilt, embarrassment, all those heavy things. So the overthinking is protecting us from a feeling or feelings. And so when we bring it out, we name it and we give it a new job. And this new job is going to be like, they're our ally now. Here's what I'd like you to do moving forward. And every time it comes up with that not good enough, you're like, I hear you. Thank you for trying to protect me. Your new role is to do this. This is what I really need from you moving forward. And that is we do it over and over and over. And every time they step out of their comfort zone and they step into a new out of their comfort zone, it's going to get unearthed again. And then we bring it up. Okay, what's its message now? Where was this created? How is this serving you? Okay, what would we like to do with that message? How can we transmute it so that it can now become something that's more empowering and help you do the thing that you know you want to do quicker and without so much drama around it?
I think in Disney metaphors often, I had a cassette that I listened to literally 12 hours because I would go down to my grandmother's house in Florida. But I think about images where the protagonist in a movie has this kind of enemy, this almost external opposite. They're kind of the same, but they're at war with each other. And there's a turning point in a number of movies where this enemy and the protagonist come together, and they converge their forces to fight the ultimate enemy, whatever that is. And we all can think of, even if we can't think of a movie where that takes place, we know this kind of energetic charge that comes when there's like, oh my gosh, I'm not fighting this energy anymore. This energy is actually serving me and helping propel me towards the ultimate goal. Sometimes, the shadow work is to actually release the belief that you still have a lot of work to do in order to take action, right? Like if that can be the comfort zone, that can be the self-protection mode of like, well, I just have a lot of work to do still, before I feel like I can take on. It's like, that's the limiting belief, because it's kind of idealizing the situation. And so can you risk that you're enough right now? You don't have to actually do more. You will continue to do work, yes, but this is just preventing you from actually stepping into that next steps.
I am so glad you said that, because it's so easy to get stuck in the I am healing. I am in my healing era. And that becomes an excuse for non-action. I'm working on myself. But really, this is what I call my clients out on. You're not taking action because you're making a reason to not take action. And that, again, is your inner critic. Your inner critic is holding you back. If you really want to bring this into your life, whatever it is that you're calling in, it requires action. And it requires imperfect, messy action over and over and over. The healing can be interwoven. And sometimes the action sparks the healing, because you became that person who did the thing that you didn't think you could do. Surprise, you've healed that inner demon, right? And I love the saying, your wound is your wand. When you're able to take that, whatever it was that happened to you, that you've created stories around, and transmute it into your wand, your magic, that's part of the healing. That is healing, and taking action on it, because you know you can help other people heal and move on and really inspire others as well. It's just an energetic pulse out to people, and being the light and proving that it is possible to create, even though you've been through the hard thing. Even though this really tough thing has happened to you, you can still take action, and you can still create amazing things in your life.
Yes, I think this is, as we do more and more work, our shadow gets a little bit more and more advanced. It upgrades too, and it gets a bit more tricky and sneaky in how, because again, like our shadow, it keeps us safe. Like it keeps those contents that went into our shadow safe. In fact, like when a part of us, say our voice, like our ability to state and own and embody our purpose, when that goes into shadow, it doesn't get banished in this sense that it like disappears. Actually, our shadow functions kind of like an organ that just kind of holds that energy until we're ready. But it also sees it as there's this unconscious way of protecting that. So when it starts to come up, when that purpose starts to want to be embodied, our shadow's like, no, that's not safe. Let's pull this back down. You talked about people helping your clients regulate their nervous system. And I think that's a huge part of people embodying their purpose and moving, these subtle shifts into that. What are some of the signs, symptoms, signifiers for you when someone is really moving that direction? Like their nervous system is regulating, they're taking action. What are some of those signs and symptoms that you commonly see?
It is clear to me that they have really taken ownership and learned how to regulate when they don't spiral. The spiraling takes on two kind of distinct forms. One is hypomania, where they just dissociate, distract, hide. That's I just can't anymore feeling, like I need to sleep. I need to binge Netflix. I need to, just withdrawal. Or hypermania, where they're just like panic, freaking out, like so much anxiety. And a lot of times when you are doing something that feels scary, you're going to take on one or both of these. And it's very much like a roller coaster. Like I take this scary step and I'm so anxious. And then I get fried and then I just withdraw. And so it's like your nervous system is just up and down and up and down. And when you learn how to regulate, you know how to resource yourself so that if you notice you're getting anxious, you know how to tap in and reground. Or if you notice you're withdrawing, you know how to lift yourself up and give yourself the energy, not to manic mode, but just to a little more oomph underneath your step. So you maybe tap in to the anxiety or to the withdrawal, but then you recognize it. You're like, oh, I'm onto myself. I know what's happening here. And I also know what to do. So when they first come to me, maybe they don't realize that these are their patterns. Awareness is always the first step. Oh, I see this is what I do. And when you can see what you're doing, when you're onto yourself, you can immediately catch it before it spirals, before you withdraw, before you just totally freak out, right? And feel so anxious and maybe even panic attacks. You can touch into that and also co-regulate and get back to it. And it's like a gentle back and forth. Again, with the subtle shifts, it's like a subtle shift up and a subtle shift down, and a little bit of the up and down, knowing that it's okay to feel the anxiety. It's okay to feel like withdrawal, but it doesn't become your new norm and you don't get stuck there.
Yeah. Okay. So something that's coming up for me as you talk about the subtle shifts, there's something that feels both like gentle, but also like super sustainable when it comes to the subtleness of the shifts, because like big shifts are not sustainable. Like when there's like a whipping back and forth between like the hypomania, like mountaintop and then like massive dark valley experience. So the subtleness of what you're talking about feels like, oh, that's how you actually make up real ground, continuing to take steps in the direction and maybe not even having complete certainty that like this is the ultimate direction, but you're taking steps, and that action is the mechanism through which you start to bring forward this new life.
It reminds me of people who win the lottery and they haven't gained the identity of a person who has that amount of money, and how often they don't keep the money. It's spent, and then they wind up at their baseline because that's where they're comfortable. Even though to them having money felt so great, like, oh my gosh. It's the same thing when you're creating something in your life. You're building an identity, a new identity. And part of that is co-regulating yourself, learning how your ins and outs. And it all boils down to self-trust. The more you're onto yourself, the more you know how to balance your nervous system, the more you can trust that you can step out of your comfort zone and not go into full-blown panic. You trust yourself. It's like you are your best friend. You are your strongest ally. You know you have your own back, and you're the person who makes it work no matter what. And even thinking that, sometimes even thinking like, oh, it's all up to me, can feel really scary for somebody who has not ever really been that person for themselves before. And that's where the small steps can come in. I take this step, it's out of my comfort zone, and look, I'm still here. Maybe it was uncomfortable, but I'm still here. And look what I learned. And that's the reflection you were talking about. When you reflect back, what did I learn through this process? How did I grow? And then how would I like to apply that learning to other areas of my life, to future actions, until eventually, again, you're that millionaire and you can sustain it because it doesn't feel so jostling to your identity.
Yeah, because like our nervous system essentially is not going to allow us to have more goodness than we can carry because honestly, it is. This is Robert Johnson, one of my favorite Jungian authors, talks about it's not our shadow, the dark shadow, if you will. That's the part of our shadow that we imagine to be gross and icky that scares us the most. It's actually our gold. It's our gold that really terrifies us and triggers our nervous system more than that stuff. And anyone who's drawn to kind of the inner work kind world is likely cool with being a piece of shit. Like they're okay with like, yeah. Like I had a client recently who was like, yeah, I'm like the narrative of I'm not good enough. Like I've been down that road a million times. I'm like, I'm sure you have. Have you experienced what it's like to just embody that? Like you are abundance. Like you are abundance. That will activate the nervous system more than I'm not enough. Like that's actually the comfort zone. The stretch is to embody and believe and take action around, oh, there is abundance within me and all around me. Which kind of brings me to this question around connecting to source or divine energy. Can you talk a bit about what that means to you personally, how that is accessed within your coaching container? What does divine energy, source energy look like, and how does that help us move in these subtle shifts?
For me, in my work, in my personal life, building a purpose-driven business has been one of the quickest ways for me to start tapping into those higher energies because so much can feel out of my control when I'm doing something I've never done before. And what's really grounding, and I learned at a very early phase in purpose-driven work, is to know that I'm not alone here. I'm not the only being. I am protected. And I have my biggest cheerleader is my higher self. I've got my angels, my guides, my ancestors cheering me on, and they want what's best for me. They're holding my vision. And this is the work I do with my clients as well. Help them tap into their higher self, their source, their power, the energetic, uplifting power that's really pulling them toward what they want. They came here to create a life of abundance, whatever that looks like for them. They have an energetic family lifting them up, and to create a practice around speaking to that higher self, connecting with that higher self, listening to that higher wisdom. And that's all intuition. So like when I was talking about the overthinking and the perfectionism, I like to imagine that as like, that's your 3D self. That's your fear talking. What is your intuition saying here? And that might be a slow practice. That might be meditation. That might be walking in nature, going for a swim, tapping into your source regularly, listening, and taking that intuitive action. The moment you get the intuitive hit, okay, I feel that in my gut. I know this is right. This is not fear-driven. This is not striving and wanting to bring in something that's really not aligned. This is it. And I feel it. And my next step, this is the subtle shift, is to do blank. And it is just one thing. It can be a couple of little things, but you're taking that action, but you're listening to your higher self and you're trusting that it's got your purpose, your wisdom, your soul contract, whatever you like to call it, holding it strong for you and marching alongside you as you make your way through this. And every time you start to doubt it or withdraw or question, and this is something that my clients go through all the time, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if I can do this. Am I just like wishing and dreaming? Like what I have is good enough. That's another really big thing. It's like, my life is good. Who am I to ask for more? And it's not that you're asking for more. It's that you're evolving into a person that's going to help elevate the consciousness of humanity, even if it's just with one person, your child. right? Or your partner. You are lifting yourself up. You're tapping into source. You are standing in your greatness to inspire others in whatever capacity to do the same.
You said so many things that are like their own episodes there. I love it. Like the first one is you tap into divine energy, source energy by entering into the unknown. It's so counterintuitive, and yet like I know exactly what you mean. Like when you willingly, consciously lay down control, like you're not doing it haphazardly. You're intuitively and consciously laying down control, entering into the unknown of what you know is your path. Like there's nothing you can do except be open to divine energy that that animates. The word soul, by the way, is connected to the Latin anima, which is where we get the word animate. And like when we are connected at that soul level, where this kind of intersection of the divine and human experience, that is where we are animated. And but I will say we spend a lot of time. It's very easy to spend a lot of time trying to self-animate, because that's what the nervous system knows. It's like, I've got to make this happen. And then that's very isolating. So the second thing that you brought forward was all around, you're not alone. You have your higher self. And then you brought in, I have my ancestors. Like there is energy in your lineage. You're not the first to do this, but you're the current person that is being embodied through. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I want to double click on that idea of connecting to this kind of cloud of witnesses, if you will, of your lineage that allows you to be encouraged and bolstered forward in your journey.
Our ancestors have paved the way for us to do what we're doing. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And there is talk and a lot of information about ancestral trauma, right? The things that have happened to our ancestors that we are now carrying. Part of the work you do, the shadow work, is releasing that, right? Like that's not yours to carry. So that is something that you can grow through. And I also like to think that my ancestors that I do not know are looking over me thinking, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you and also like I am part of your journey, and I'm so proud to be part of your journey, because where they were, whatever they went through, there were limits, and they were not able to do what I can do. And whether it was just their limiting beliefs or just their situation. And again, this is like the people who are cheering behind you, the energy that are cheering behind you. And so grateful that you're bringing forward this purpose, this mission, this life, this energy. And it's so positive and meaningful. And I like to think that they're part of my team. They're still cheering me on from long, long ago, and they're part of me now.
It reminds me of Moana when she's having this massive self-inquiry that's rising up in her. Like there's something calling her out beyond the waves. And she has this moment where she enters into the cave. And in that cave, she connects with that ancestral spirit, which there's this moment where she goes, we were voyagers. That's what she says. She goes, we were voyagers. And at that point, spoiler alert if you've not seen Moana 1 at this point, but, her entire community is depending on her to be this image of stability in the future. We're going to stay on the island, but the island isn't supplying what it needs anymore. It's not giving the abundance that it, has been there for generations. So she's connecting back to that energy that has been in her family, her bloodline for generations before, that got them there. I think that's so vital because the nervous system activation, one of the downsides of it is like, oh, I'm alone. That can be a real benefit if you're like, okay, I've got to survive. But if you're trying to move towards purpose and this abundance, you're not going to get there through a survivalist mentality, right? you're going to get there through finding ways to connect to higher and greater energy than just that fear response. Jennifer, as we wrap up, could you talk a little bit about your coaching container, what you facilitate in that space, what people can expect if they are interested, and just maybe some of the different modalities and the highest aim that you have in your work?
Absolutely. The work that I do with clients is to go and just unearth the blocks that are keeping them from creating what they want to create in this world. And it involves some deep dive stuff. And the people who come to me are ready for that. My approach is very grounded. It's very reassuring, but also I will call them out on their shit. And that's my role as a mentor. I'm here to hold your vision because they're on their hero's journey. And I would like to consider myself as one of the people who are cheering them on energetically. So part of it involves one-on-one deep dives, of course, goal setting, accountability, calling ourselves out on our bullshit, really being able to come to me between sessions as well. It's a really co-creative space. I am the cheerleader, I am the guide, I am the mentor, but ultimately the people I work with are their own sovereign entity, making their own decisions. And I am helping to lift them up to that mission, to that purpose, so that they can create what they want to create. And we work together in a 6-month container. So we have time to flush out the things that come up. The initial things, they get flushed out right away. Then my clients start to take action, and then they notice new things start popping up. Oh, I see this. This isn't something I noticed before because this other voice was so loud, but I've got this other gremlin that pops up, and I see it when I'm doing this other new thing that I haven't done before. We're partners, so they don't have to be alone. And my clients reflect back to me often that I say the thing that they didn't know they needed to hear. They come into our container and they, with all of their stuff, and it gets sorted out. And by the end, they walk out and they're like, wow, that big mountain that I thought that I had to climb, it doesn't feel so big anymore. And that's where the subtle shifts come in. This is subtle shift, small step. The mountains don't have to be so steep and so tall when you have a partner. And that's who I am for my clients.
I think you described yourself once as you're really good at hearing what's not being said. And I think that there is a self-sabotaging that people can do when they, even if they enter into the coaching space, they surrender this control. There can be this sabotaging of like, actually everything's good. Like you were saying, like, I'm good. My life is good. And that goodness can deflect from really getting into the stuff that could be abundant, like trading out abundance for goodness. And your ability to see what's not being said, the smoke and mirrors that clients may throw up in order to divert your attention away from like the thing that's going to be really painful. If people have tried coaching before, they've gone down these routes, and it's like, like I made a little bit of progress, but it was just kind of a lot of nice and like okayness. You're going to take them where they both desire deeply to go and yet don't want to go. They want to avoid it. So would you say that, give maybe in your own words, add a little bit to that?
Yeah. I, as a former educator, I know I can read my audience. And I know exactly what's going on. I've got a really strong sense of intuition, and I'm a huge empath. And also my clients who come to me, they're just doing the things that I do myself. So everyone is our mirror. My clients are my mirror, and I can catch them the moment they start to self-sabotage through their language, through their action, through their avoidance inaction, essentially. And my approach is like a grounded, loving call out. Like, I see this in you. I see this happening. And, you are your own best mentor, and I'm here to help you do what you said you wanted to do. And I am not just going to nice my way through it. We establish at the very beginning. The people who come to me, they always say, yes, call me out on my bullshit, right? I always ask for permission. I don't just dive in and just start yip-yapping at people. I always get their permission first, permission to be fully transparent in what I'm witnessing. And then I share with them in a very loving and grounded way, call them out on their bullshit. And every time they come back, they're like, yep, you're absolutely correct. I didn't even know that I was doing that. And thank you so much for calling me out. You're absolutely correct. And then we can start course correcting just over and over and over. I am their mirror. I'm the person who's going to keep them from sabotaging because they do have a goal. They do have a mission. They have a purpose and a vision for their life that they really deeply desire. And as a partner, I won't let them self-sabotage because I want it for them as well.
Yes. Well, as we wrap up for sure this time, is there anything you'd like to share that you haven't shared yet? And how can people find you? Where can they connect with the work you're doing?
The last thing I really would love to hit home is if there is a knock on the door and it feels scary or there's some guilt around it, like my life is great, who am I to ask for more? Instead of looking at it through the eyes of judgment, to look through the eyes of love and curiosity. What is this here to teach me? What is this here? Why is this here for me? And start to question, what could it mean? What else is possible? And just ask those open-ended questions for yourself. Follow the guidance, follow the light, and you will never, ever be steered in the wrong direction. Just leaning into your self-trust. And if people would like to learn more and get to know me a little bit better, I have a podcast called Subtle Shifts with Jennifer Delliquadri. I'm also very active on Instagram, jennifer.delliquadri. I would love to be able to connect with people there as well.
Well, and all of your links and information will be in the show notes if anyone would like to connect with Jennifer and begin this journey of actually embodying and taking action on the life that you require. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom. It's truly a gift.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, take care. Hi, Michael here. Hey, seriously, thank you for listening and engaging the Shadow Mike podcast and YouTube channel. I trust today's episode gave you something to reflect on or illuminated a new trailhead to your hidden life. If this episode resonated with you, you can subscribe, leave a comment or review, and share it with your people. This really helps spread the word and boosts our digital presence. Remember, growth isn't a straight line, and we're all figuring it out as we go. I'm grateful to be in this unfolding and excavating work with you. Until next time, be yourself. You've got a good self. And remember, it is all a gift.